What did you want to do before you became a Beatle?
Nothing. I didn't want to do anything else. Honest.
Yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday.
McCartney is an amazing songwriter and an amazing bass player.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day. And I'll send all my loving to you.
Fame for his violin bass. I mean, he started out playing guitar, and he didn't switch to bass till later, I think in the Hamburg days.
He lifts the thing musically all the time, you know. Very melodic, great ear for, oh, the bass could do this, and change the whole complexity of the chord and the sound of the chord.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There beneath the blue suburban skies I sit and meanwhile back in Penny
It didn't take long for people to cotton on to the fact that there were these remarkable, very musical bass lines appearing in all the Beatles songs. If you listen to even the earliest stuff, it kind of has a singing quality. His bass playing reflects his vocal style in many ways.
My first lingering memory of him is how he went round us all, round the rest of the group, round myself and my wife and indeed Brian Epstein, the roadies and everybody, and asked them what they wanted to drink. And then said, right, it's doubles all round, eh lads? And off he went to the bar and he ordered up all these drinks. And when the guy behind the bar eventually gave him the price of £2.14 and threepence or whatever it was, only then did Paul go, Brian! So although the genial host Paul McCartney had been seen to host the occasion and buy a round in, it was Brian Epstein who actually paid for it, picked up the tab. Now that was typical of Paul McCartney. He could get away with murder. Over the years, I think he must have smoked thousands of cigarettes of mine. It got to such a stage in the end that I started putting cigarettes down on my expenses each month when I put them into Brian Epstein, and he didn't query it at all, paid up like a lamb.
Paul, what sort of music are you going to have at your party in Sydney?
Oh, you having a party?
Yeah, you want to come?
I'll have one of these. I don't know, any kind, you know. Rock and roll. You know, the kind of music that we like. Rhythm and blues, rock and roll.
You don't dig the classics at all?
Yes, a little bit, you know.
Is that American dig?
Don't exactly make party swing, do they? You know. Oh, Beethoven, he's all right. But,
If you put it on fast, it does. It goes like
fast.
always gets a laugh.
It's a riot. But otherwise, he normally sends them home.
Paul did Little Richard a lot and a few obscure Elvis tracks and show tunes. He turned into his own, you know, like Till There Was You and Wooden Heart and Besame Mucho. Paul had this cross-section of things which he liked to perform. And he could always do Little Richards.
Paul McCartney, according to all reports, was the worst of the four for turning up late. And there's a marvellous quote, which you've probably heard, but I will repeat it, that when they went for their first meeting with Epstein, John, Peter, Best, and George arrived for the appointment. They were a little late, but not too much. But Paul hadn't turned up, and they were sitting there an hour. And in the end, Epstein was getting quite annoyed about this, because he's a businessman and he's got a shop to run. And George said, well, I'll ring him up then and see where he is. So he rings Paul, and Paul's having a bath. And he lived 7 miles from the city centre. And Epstein's sort of very annoyed about this, and he said, he's going to be very late then, isn't he? And George said, yeah, but he'll be very clean.
From Me to You, the Beatles' third single, constructed in a very clever way where the verses and the choruses have completely different obvious chiming changes. Again, unbelievable middle eights, and also a change from the first two singles where they're slightly more obscure in the way in their chord changes, etc. I think basically they're beginning to get a formula, but it's the middle eights and the verses and the changes from the verses to the chorus that give them the keys, and the harmonies between John and Paul, which make it very clever. Construction is all important, really. It's just the sort of interplay between the voices, and the message of the song is like, from me to you. What a wonderful way to establish a relationship, really, not only between the guy and the girl that they're singing about, but also between the band and its audience. Somehow the Beatles are giving you something. And I think that's a kind of magical, original idea, and just shows you how well Beatles songs were being constructed right from the start.
I thought it was a bit stodgy and not as exciting as other tracks of the Beatles. You know, it is a bit jog-trotty and kind of, you can again feel the effort. I suppose that's always a sign that a track isn't really happening to the maximum. Maybe it's the song, maybe it's just the way they played it on the day.
One of the rather subtle things about this is the repeat of the introduction as the sort of closing few bars. I mean, it starts in C major, it's unproblematic. But we move from C major to a minor. And at the very end, you get something like that, so that you actually end in the minor. Now, why on earth would you end a song like this in the minor, where it's basically a major key song? It's just a suggestion, perhaps, that it's an indication that she won't actually call.
Just call on me, and I'll send it along with love from me to you, to you, to you, to you.
There was only one song that I was a bit iffy about when I told you that I used to record them singing live when I didn't have the 4-track. And so to do that, I had the vocal mic on a figure-of-8 configuration with the dead side looking at the group, microphone I'm talking about. And in front of that, I would use a music stand where they would put their lyrics, handwritten lyrics, to both Paul and John could glance down and refresh their memory with the lyric. I set them up on this particular session, and I went down later to check that all the mics were in position, and by this time they had put a lyric on the music stand. So I thought, oh, it'd be interesting, go and have a look. And I went and had a look, handwritten, and it said, "She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah." And I thought to myself, Christ, this is going to be a funny sort of song.
She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah.
If you listen back to She Loves You now, it does sound a very banal, sort of crass bit of work. But if you can manage to transport yourself back to 1963, it is the song of Beatlemania. It's so simple. It's got one or two nice little twists. There's an extra new chord they'd learnt, which they put at the very end of the song, and so on. But it's just so simple and so impossibly catchy, and it just seems to sum up all the madness of 1963.
They did something a little bit different than a lot of bands did. They went right into the chorus at the beginning of the song, if I recall. And most songs are 2 verses, then a chorus, and then a solo, and then it's repeated. But if I recall that song, they go right into the chorus right off the bat.
I'm sure if you presented McCartney with something like this, he wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it was intentional. But the way that I feel he worked was so closely in touch with his emotions, quite frankly, that it simply just comes through almost untested.
He said it's one of those answering songs, like in America. He said, I'm influenced by the Americans when they do the answering song, and we'll do an answering song here. So it was mainly Paul. That was an idea of his, the answering song.
Paul McCartney is a bass player. Fantastic and very melodic bass player, and technically a very good bass player as well.
His bass playing is really, really clever, and it's very, very well constructed. And because he's such a great songwriter, his bass playing is all constructed with sympathy for the song.
The bass player of that era as well that everybody respected was Jack Bruce in the Cream, and McCartney was a very different bass player. But he was really exciting. If you talk to any bass player, they say, oh, McCartney's bass playing fantastic, some great ideas.
She said you heard a song, she almost lost her mind. Now she said she knows you're not the hurting kind. She said she loves you, you know that can't be right. Yes, she loves you, and you know you should be glad.
For instance, one of the things he might do when he was playing is if he's playing over a C chord, the first bar he'd play the C root, the second bar he'd move to the third of the chord and play the E root. If he was playing over a G chord, first bar he might play G, and then he'd move to the B. So there's always this climbing feeling, and he had a great ear for doing it, all that sort of taking something and making it a little bit more melodic without it being complex.
And he's a bit of a multi-instrumentalist on the choir. Good drummer as well, and amongst all the other things he can do. So the fact that he'd be able to think not just as a bass player, which he was of course, but as a composer and a multi-instrumentalist, listening to ways songs are constructed, that would inform his work. So he'd be able to take risks and try something really very adventurous.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always do. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you.
All My Loving was the very first song that Paul wrote where the words came before the music. He said he wrote it like a poem, and then the music came sort of later. So this was another step in this songwriting experience of him.
It was obvious that Lennon and McCartney were going to be regarded as great songwriters, a great team. And so All My Loving was like them taking the next step forward into being more sophisticated, perhaps.
I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I am missing, and hope that my dreams will come true.
I think All My Loving shows certainly a familiarity with the medium. I mean, the Beatles have been writing songs for a few years now. They know what they're doing, and there's a sense in which they're taking further what they have done previously, because instead of basically 4-chord loops, which is what we've had up to this point, you have a much longer pattern. Gosh, it sounds like organ music like that, doesn't it?
All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true.
I never understood why it didn't make a single, actually, even though I think it might have made a single in America. It certainly didn't make a single here. And it's an unbelievably great song. Fantastic melody, brilliant classic Beatles middle eight, and just an unbelievably good song.
All My Lovin' is an interesting bit of songwriting from Paul. First of all, because of the counterpoint or harmony singing, which is, I think, the most interesting that the Beatles have done up to that point. Secondly, because it's got some amazing rhythm guitar work on it from John, which I think he was very, very proud of. And thirdly, because it's maybe Paul McCartney's first great melody, which it's on the road to things like Yesterday and so on later on. And it says something about the calibre of the Beatles' material at that point, that they could write a song as amazingly commercial as that and then not put it out as a single.
With And I Love Her, Paul wrote this because of a Perry Como number called And I Love Her So, and he thought, I'll start a number at the title in the middle of a sentence. And that's sort of what inspired him, because they did get inspiration from all others. They listened to everything, you know. And Paul in particular, while John was more of the rough rock and roller, Paul was the one, apart from his sort of love of Little Richard, who was down into Broadway show musicals and the influence of his father and singers like Frank Sinatra.
What other influence would you say you had at the beginning? We get a lot of letters about this.
Early Elvis Presley, I'd say. Yeah, definitely. And American groups, generally. Just American chorus groups, particularly.
It was the beginning of showing that they could write a great ballad, but they'd throw in a classical guitar, which was unheard of at the time. And of course, years later, a sitar in certain songs and things like that. It was that searching for a new way of communicating an idea, an old idea, And I Love Her. It's been around, love song's been around forever, but they always seem to find a new way to introduce it to the public that would grab you in some way and kind of go, hey, that's interesting.
It's a very good song. It's very well sung. It's a clever song. And I think it is quite melancholy. You know, for the first time, it's sort of quite a melancholy subject and sort of, yeah, it's a ballad, but not a ballad. They didn't write ballads at that time. You know, you didn't get Let It Be or, do you know what I mean, or Hey Jude at that time. Everything was quite up-tempo. It was a sort of up-tempo time. I don't think, not in this day and age, everyone does, you know, it's the standard thing. 3 up-tempo songs, 1 ballad. 3 up-tempo songs, 1 ballad. It's the pop formula. In those days, it wasn't like that, you know. The Beatles were banging out up-tempo number ones, you know, all the time, and it was always, you wouldn't expect to have a ballad.
The melody doesn't move as you might expect. It's a little bit tortured, really. I mean, just to take that rather key thing in the melody. There's a note missing there, which they studiously avoid. It's as if that note represents her, and she's not in the song. They're singing, or McCartney is singing about somebody who's absent.
Bright are the stars that shine, dark is the sky. I know this love of mine will never die, and I love her.
From me, when I listen to it, I think this is McCartney that's written the song, although it probably says Lennon McCartney. It makes me think it's basically Paul McCartney, because out of all the Beatles songwriters, McCartney was the one that wrote the more sugary ballads. John Lennon did as well, and so did George Harrison, but McCartney was known for that. Songs like Michelle and The Long and Winding Road, and even Yesterday, I suppose. So, yeah, the ballad thing, the ballad department in the Beatles generally was looked after Paul McCartney, and he's very good at it, still is today.
We'd like to carry on now with a song
from our new album in England, and it'll be out in America shortly. And it's a song featuring just Paul, and it's called Yesterday. Yesterday.
Yesterday is, I mean, what can you say? That is apparently the most played song in the history of the universe. Who could sit there and say, but it's no good? I mean, it's nonsense to say that. People love it, therefore it is good.
I find the fawning over Yesterday as a little bit of a strange one, because it, to me, is an absolutely special song and brilliantly written. But they'd written some great songs. You listen to Hard Day Today album with this boy, All My Loving, 8 Days a Week. You think, what great writers they really were, and how they really have the art of construction and melody absolutely down to a fine art, and how they naturally have that giftedness to put a lyric in a really simple way. That's what made them so popular.
Oh, yesterday came suddenly. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say.
John Lennon steps aside. Paul McCartney entirely wrote the song. Lennon may have given him a phrase or two. George Martin helped him do the string section, and there you had something totally different. It's entirely Paul McCartney. He was mystified by it. You know, there's this famous story about him coming up with the tune, and he goes around singing it to people, saying, I don't think I wrote this. I've copied it off someone, haven't I? And Lennon and Harrison, they hear it and say, no, I think that's original. I think it's yours. I think you wrote that.
He used to nip into Abbey Road and record himself without the others. And one number he wrote entirely by himself without any help from the Beatles was Yesterday, and he went in and recorded that without the Beatles, so that's pure 100% Paul McCartney. But of course it went under the name Lennon-McCartney. And what happened many years later, when they were doing the anthology, Paul asked Yoko Ono if it could possibly be Yesterday, could he have it under, McCartney, Lennon, and she said no. And Paul was a bit upset at the time, because due to copyright changes in the law in America, and this was at the time that Michael Jackson had rights to the Beatles songs, widows got more money. So Yoko was getting well over 30%, and Paul was getting 12.5% of his own songs. She had nothing to do with, neither did John.
Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong, now I long for yesterday.
It was a one-off in the Beatles catalogue at the time. It was, I suppose, extremely unusual, just in all pop music. A voice, a string quartet. That's it.
This is the first song of the Beatles where I feel the words have been really worked at, really properly worked at, to find something that works at every single point, that makes it sound so natural as the melody sounds, and as natural as the melody was. But finding Yesterday and Suddenly as words that stand on their own and make you think, well, what? I mean, it's only a second, I know, but its effect is so dramatic.
You can't really say, where does a great song come from? Probably woke up with it in his head. So, and then comes the hard work of actually arranging it and turning it into something lasting. And well, I think that was kind of a kind of crucial moment in the Beatles' career, really, where people realised that they were not just the four mop tops and a teenage pop phenomenon. They really were masterful songwriters, two of the greatest of the 20th century.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for?
Eleanor Rigby, again, was just one of those moments when you're completely grabbed. Clearly, in a certain sense, you'd immediately hear a connection with Yesterday because of the strings. It was in that area. But the interesting fact about Eleanor Rigby is it was the first Beatles track where there was no Beatles instruments played. It's only strings. Beatles don't play anything on it, it's just the vocals they do.
Eleanor Rigby is once again typical of Paul McCartney in the development of Paul's writing as it's different from John's, even like, with Michelle and things. But it didn't turn out as Eleanor Rigby. I think he first thought of it as Daisy Miller. And he was working on the song over a period of time, and he'd gone down to Bristol to see Jane Asher, who was in a play at the time with the Bristol Old Vic. And he was walking and he looked and he saw the name Rigby on the shop window. And then he used the name Eleanor for Eleanor Bron, who had been in the film and things. So he came up with Eleanor Rigby. And then, of course, they as he developed it and talked it over with the others, they changed the pattern of what was in the song, because the song changed a lot from when he first wrote it to what it actually came into being. And then it's weird and strange that many years later people says in the St. Peter's Church graveyard where John and Paul first met, there's a gravestone to Eleanor Rigby. But Paul didn't know this and didn't get the inspiration from that, but people keep referring to that and all photographs of Eleanor Rigby's grave.
All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? Ah, look at all the lonely people.
It's just gorgeous in a way, isn't it? In a sense, that's all you need to say. It's just this gorgeous, sad sound. But it is a story about an old person. It's another step, looking out beyond their generation. It's one thing. You look inside yourself, that's one of the processes happening to them. It's more into the depths of their own emotions. And then another step is, well, look right outside yourself at people who are completely different to you. And one of the completely different to you type things is, well, look at people from a different generation. So in there they've got this portrait of the woman, the old woman, whose life seems to revolve around this church, and the chief supporting actor, Father Mackenzie, the priest. And so you have this really bleak picture of the end of a life in amongst all this youth-oriented Beatlemania type thing. It was really moving on.
No one was saved. All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong?
Sgt. Pepper, fated as the Beatles' true masterpiece, I put it down to one thing and one thing only. The Times gave it a great review. Stamp of approval. For me, bit of a smokescreen, because I think Revolver and Rubber Soul are every bit as good.
I think that's a masterpiece album, no doubt about it. It certainly influenced everybody that I knew at the time. You could not go anywhere and not have that album playing, a friend's house, on the radio, wherever. It was a huge album.
This is the problem with how do you come back down again after the heights of experience that Sgt. Pepper offers you and certainly gave everybody in 1967. And you come down with an EP, because that's all that Magical Mystery Tour originally was. Half a dozen songs which come out of the movie, which are then padded out with Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields, things that hadn't appeared on anywhere else in the other albums at the time.
And all the people that come and go, stop and say hello. On the corner is a banker with a motor car. The little children laugh at him behind his back. And the banker never wears a Mac in the pouring rain. Very strange.
Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane were a step forward for the Beatles, not just musically, but also in terms of the lyrics. I think in particular John Lennon was very keen to write about his childhood, and then that inspired, when Paul heard that, he thought, oh okay, childhood, Liverpool, and he started to write a song about what Liverpool and childhood meant to him. And so you've got two very, very personal bits of writing, which are then expressed with the most sort of avant-garde recording techniques of the time. They broke all the rules that they'd already broken in the past, used all sorts of new instruments, new techniques and so on. So I think much more with Sgt. Pepper, Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields are the absolute peak of the Beatles as a band.
Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. For a fish and finger pies in summer. Meanwhile, back behind the shelter in the middle of the roundabout.
If Strawberry Fields is more Lennon, then Penny Lane is more McCartney. Again, it refers to an area of Liverpool which, you know, he knew well and had grown up in. Most of the places referred to in the song are real, but not all of them. Some are just kind of poetic license, that kind of thing. And it's a kind of typical McCartney song in the sense that it has kind of piano chords and is very melodic. A fantastic melody that you can't forget, that's somehow both happy and sad at the same time.
Beneath the blue suburban skies, I sit and meanwhile back in Penny Lane is in my ears and in my eyes. There beneath the blue suburban skies, Penny Lane.
I suppose the last job, gig, production, whatever, that I saw the Beatles do enthusiastically as a group, as a team together, working solidly together with mutual enthusiasm, must have been the making of Magical Mystery Tour towards the back end of 1967, immediately after Brian Epstein's death, in fact. Now, a lot of people at the time thought that Paul McCartney was being very callous in forcing the group to go back to work within a few days of Brian Epstein's death and a few days of his funeral. But in fact, if Paul had not pushed them into working at that time, I believe that they might well have gone off to India with their newfound little giggling guru, the Maharishi, Mahesh Yogi. And as Paul actually said to me at the time, if they do that, if they go off to India, I doubt if the Beatles will ever come together again as a working band. And that was quite sort of strong words, but I could see exactly what he meant. They needed to stay together then, because they were already in their own minds at that time starting to break up. Let me use another wording here, and instead of saying breaking up, they were already starting to go off in their various separate directions.
Paul kind of developed the idea of actually sort of heading off somewhere, you know, with the Beatles themselves and a group of sort of fellow travellers, and just sort of making it up as they went along.
He sat down and suddenly thought, Magical Mystery Tour, we'll do a film. And he actually sat down on the plane with a bit of paper, he drew a big circle, and he mapped out an hour's worth of TV time or film time and said, John's 10 minutes, Paul's 10 minutes, Ringo's 10 minutes, George's 10 minutes, or other rubbish. And that was it. That was Magical Mystery Tour.
It was a change for them. It was quite psychedelic, it was quite humorous, and it was quite chaotic. So it had a very, very veiled storyline, and this made it hard. Script-wise, it was a tough film to watch. But it was unbelievably good music-wise.
Day after day, alone on a hill, The man with the foolish grin is keeping perfectly still. But nobody wants to know him. They can see that he's just a fool.
Fool on the Hill is a quite special kind of Beatles song, really. Moving away from the joyous sort of celebratory sort of Beatles music we'd known and loved into something rather more mournful and sad and touching, really, as well, effective, serious. It was a new direction for the Beatles.
It's very McCartney. He was the master of the kind of beautiful melodies and the piano chords, and has a sense of longing and sadness to it. And it was perhaps marking a new phase, or they were moving so quickly at this time that every few months there was a new phase, but it's marking a new phase in the Beatles' development. Perhaps putting them nearer the kind of the classic ballad status that some of their later material like Long and Winding Road and Let It Be was part of.
Very difficult to say what Fool on the Hill was actually about, apart from a feeling of being out of place and out of time, and I don't know whether that had anything to do with the fact that the other Beatles were experimenting more with drugs than Paul was, or whether it was just a feeling of being slightly out of sync with his girlfriend Jane Asher at the time. But as ever with McCartney, when he's on prime form, he managed to find a way to take personal feeling and make a song out of it that's got universal appeal that almost anybody can identify with.
I find this interesting, actually, because I've read so many Who Was the Fool? I've read so many theories about this, and I have my own, and I'm probably wrong, but I went to school at the same time as Paul McCartney and George Harrison, and it was situated next to the Liverpool Art College on a hill, actually on a hill. And we used to have this guy at the top of the hill by the art college who used to stand there in summer days, and he was sketching. Now, whether he was from the art college, I don't know. And all the lads used to say, wonder who that fool is. I wonder who he is.
But the fool on the hill sees the sun going down, and the eyes in his head see the world spinning round.
Lyrically, it's difficult to work out whether he was singing about somebody else or if he was singing about himself. With McCartney, it's never particularly clear. There's only occasionally you hear in his songs where you think, yes, this is a song about his experience, whereas Lennon, it was always quite clear this was something that had happened to him, So Fool on the Hill, an interesting song and quite an unusual song. So lyrically, you're not sure what's going on, and musically it's great because it's something that McCartney would come up with more than Lennon, perhaps, just because of his musical abilities and what he heard, and he wasn't scared to sort of try out ideas. So I'll play Fool on the Hill for you now, yeah?
The melody is strong, and the lyrics are okay, but I don't think that it sort of would rank as one of these sort of, in the top 10, anybody's top 10 of Beatles classics. Although I think it comes over very well in the context of the film once you can get past the fact that it's some sort of ego trip for Paul.
But it's a song which again presents two views. Because The Fool on the Hill has his own song, which we're told is not ours. So we're presented, if you like, with ours, which is... which is very firmly major with an obviously rising line. And is fairly unproblematic. We're then presented with the Fool, or the Fool song in a sense, I suppose, which turns to the minor. Which also rises, so there's a certain parallelism, but it rises much more problematically. It's much more difficult, it seems. It's a melody that wants to fall because it falls in individual phrases. Individual phrases fall, but the whole melody is made to rise up. So there's a tension between the two.
He never listens to them. He knows that they're the fool. They don't like him, the fool on the hill sees the sun going down, and the eyes in his head see the world spinning round.
I think Fall on the Hill, which is from Magical Mystery Tours, is one of the most beautiful songs the Beatles have ever written. It's just a great song, great melody, and a real landmark for them. I think that's what people missed about Magical Mystery Tours, is that it's a mad Monty Python film with some great songs in it, and I think that that's a really beautiful melody with a great sound and a great lyrical content, and quite dreamy and sort of non-structured in a way. It just floats around a bit, and I just think that it's really, really, really nice song, and I think that's what everyone missed when they looked at the film.
Paul, do you think that the Beatles will ever change their sphere completely from music to movies, or will it always be music mainly in your mind?
I don't know, really. At the moment, we're not. At the moment, none of us, I don't think anyway, very good in movies. I think Ringo and John in the last one were the best. But
well, I think a lot of people thought you were mighty good too.
I see. Well, I think they're wrong. I thought I was terrible actually. But maybe after a few movies, after a couple more, we might get a bit better. I can't tell really. If we do get better, and if any one of us or the four of us all suddenly become good actors, well, that would be great. Of course we'll do more movies because we enjoy doing them, and we'll also do music in them.
I know for a fact that Paul McCartney in particular wanted this to be a major cinema success, a theatrical success. He wanted theatrical release for Magical Mystery Tour and hoped against hope that this would be the beginning of a big new film career for the Beatles, which would be led with him as executive producer of future movie productions with the Beatles. That, of course, never came to pass. In fact, he lost whatever credibility he had as a producer of movies at any rate at that time, I think, and struggled very hard to get back into the movie world himself after that. But it was the last big achievement from their point of view. Critics are now going to turn on me and say, you don't know what you're talking about. They recorded some very good stuff after that in the way of albums. Yes, they did, of course, but I still believe that they had passed their best as recording artists within the context of the Fab Four. What they could do on their own was something else, something totally different, and something that we would see in 4 different ways a little later on.
Urban Spaceman, we were happy, doing this and that, but the record company said, there's this band, they're as well paid and as well known as anybody in the charts, and they haven't got a record in the charts. Well, the answer to that one, we weren't that interested, but we really came under pressure to sort of, to come up with a single. And anyway, the idea of the Urban Spaceman song just popped into my head one day, and I waited till I got home, and I wrote it in about an afternoon. And we came back and said, well, look, we think we've got a single then. We'd actually did it on Do Not Adjust Your Set. And everyone said, yeah, that's a very catchy song, you know. And then, as it happened, our manager and producer at the time was very much a clock watcher. And so after 3 hours, he'd say, right, time's up, next one. You know, we got lots of ideas and things. So Biv was moaning about this to Paul down in the Speakeasy one evening. And so Paul just offered, he said, I'll come and produce it for you. So it was a fabulous moment, going back and saying, you know, all right, we'll do the single, but we don't want you to produce it. And he said, well, who do you think you're going to get then? Paul McCartney.
We were at a Chapel's studio in Bond Street, and Paul arrived. We were all as nervous as hell. And Paul arrived, cheeky chappy, came in, hello everybody. We were all gathered around the piano. He said, come around the piano, I wrote this last night. And he started playing Hey Jude.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Remember to let her into your heart. Then you can start to make it better.
Hey Jude is a fantastic sing-along number, perhaps even more so than All You Need Is Love, if that's possible. It was written, I think, about Julian Lennon again, by McCartney, and it's such a strong song, and McCartney again deserves perhaps so much more credit than he gets. Because Lennon died and McCartney doesn't, there tends to be this kind of iconic hero worship of Lennon and giving all the credit to him, and because McCartney stayed alive, he doesn't get the kind of the sainthood or the kind of martyrdom that Lennon does. But Hey Jude is a fantastic anthem, I mean, as good as it gets. It has some great words, you know, really pithy lyrics in there. And then you get the absolutely earth-shattering La 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 Na 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 sing-along, which to this day, when McCartney does it live, you'd have to have a heart of stone to be in that audience and not be moved. You know, you can go along with all the cynicism in the world, even now to McCartney gigs, and go, oh God, how corny is this, how cheesy is this? But after a few na-na-nas around you, it's you know, it's hard not to be moved, it really is.
I suddenly realised, you know, that hang on, he means it. We've just written it. We probably know it. Maybe even the other Beatles hadn't heard it yet. But so, you know, we had a preview of Hey Jude, and then we got down to recording it. And he said to me, you know, keep singing it, even though we're not recording it. Just keep singing it. And I, that's a new one, you know. In fact, but it's a very good idea. You know, you start wrinkling out or ironing out all the wrinkles of your vocal. And Larry was doing a kind of jolly little thing, and he said, yeah, all right, we'll do one like that, but then we'll double track the drums. And sure enough, this feel emerged, you know, from the you get blah, blah, and he picks up the ukulele, you know, so it goes dinky 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 dinky.
It was great working with him, a producer that knew what he was doing. Not that Jerry Braun didn't know what he was doing, but we gave him the kind of respect that we didn't give anybody else, you know. So we got on with it, and we did Spaceman in about 2 or 3 hours, I think. You know, we just got on with it, and he did it, and off he went.
So finally it was done, and then, you know, our manager, producers thinking, well, at least we've got Paul's name on the record, you know. And that's when we really mean, you know, we said, well, we don't want Paul's name on the record. What, why? You know, I said, well, you know, if it's our record, you know, we don't want to do it on the coattails of someone else. You know, and Paul said, yeah, it's fine, you know. So someone, I can't remember who came up with the name, you know, so, well, what credit are you going to put on the record then? I said, how's Apollo C. Vermouth? Paul says, fine. So, that's how it went out. And it got to about number 17 until somebody blabbed. And then it shot up to number 5.
If the Beatles story had ended at the end of '68, their last single would have been Hey Jude, which would have been a hell of a way to go out. And in retrospect, they would probably have gone out with their best album. But ahead of them was Abbey Road, which is the most slick, commercial, ear-appealing record that they ever made. And then also Paul McCartney songs like Long and Winding Road and Let It Be. And you can make a very good case for saying that the world would be a poorer place if Paul hadn't written those. So although it might have made a nicer ending to the Beatles story, certainly on a personal level, if they'd got together at the end of '68 and said, this is fantastic, we've had a great time, let's just give up. I think musically they did have to go on for that extra year and make those last records.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be.
The Abbey Road album, which actually was the last set of recordings the Beatles ever made, although not the last release, because they did Let It Be, which was a recording of them recording an album live with Phil Spector, etc., etc., and that's when they recorded all the breakdown of relationships, etc. So it was all a bit of a sad time. Wasn't actually the last recording, because between the White Album and Abbey Road they did the whole Let It Be project, but it was all put on ice. So the actual last recordings they made were Abbey Road. And Abbey Road is an unbelievable piece of work.
By this time, Lennon and McCartney are writing totally individual songs and aren't even in the studio at the same time together.
We all knew that Abbey Road was the last thing, because it was Paul's attempt at tidying up the mess left after Let It Be and Mystery Tour.
Let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. When all the broken-hearted people living in the world agree.
There have been tensions in the Beatles, really, since Brian Epstein died. I think the fact of having a manager and somebody else to blame meant that the four Beatles tended to stay together as a sort of unified group. As soon as one of the four, Paul, was forced to take charge by the fact that the other three didn't want to, automatically the other three started to think of him as being the boss, and they'd be talking behind his back. And every time he tried to organise them, they'd be like, oh, there he goes again. Now, in Paul's defence, and he's been much maligned for this down the years as being a control freak or whatever, if Paul hadn't done it, then the Beatles would have done absolutely nothing, because John, George and Ringo wouldn't have got off their arses and made any records. So it's purely down to Paul that we get Magical Mystery Tour, the White Album, Abbey Road, Let It Be.
The Let It Be album, I think, is something of a weak album because of the fact that they weren't working well together. They weren't even getting along together. If you watch the movie, it's a tough movie to watch in a lot of respects, because you see that the Beatles were human and they didn't get along. So I think by that stage, I think it was starting to peter off, and you could see that they were thinking about solo careers.
Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be.
Let It Be, a beautiful song, about as good a way to go as you could get. If you're going to go out on a high, that's the way to do it. It's almost like a hymn in a way, but not as dull. It's McCartney at his best, and it's from the Let It Be album is often underrated. You know, it's a great album for a sort of patchwork farewell album. And Let It Be, like The Long and Winding Road, is one of the two big ballads that have lasted well since and will probably last forevermore.
Let it be.
Right at the beginning was the one. He was the pop star. He wanted to be Elvis. Nothing less would do. And he became Paul, the cute one, and He's always been the same, and just thumbs up Paul, everything's all right, whack. His career's had its ups and downs, good albums, mediocre albums, great albums.
Sweet through the heather, like deer in the glen, carry me back to the days I knew then, nights when we sang like a heavenly choir of the light and the times of the mother-king time.
Wonderful stage shows he's been doing in the past few years. They've just been phenomenal. Since he took the plunge and started doing the odd Beatles song, and doing them amazingly well. And he's doing what he loves best. He just loves being on stage. He is, and he's brilliant at it.
Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide.